Good day. My name is Chantal Adams, and I'm the student counselor at the Western Cape campus Unisa. We are based in Parow, Cape Town. Today, we will be talking about how to form positive habits to ensure that you achieve academic success. Here is a brief outline of the topics that we'll be covering today. Number one, we'll be looking at reflecting on your habits. Then we will look at the definitions of the types of addictions, the process of addiction explained, and we will look at the causes of various addictions. We will look at the South African landscape, the signs and symptoms to watch out for, the consequences of addiction, and offer resources for hope and support. Today, our focus is not only on addictions like substance use or alcohol, but we are also focusing on the more common crutches that we use in order to either self-soothe, help us find comfort, or help us escape things that we consume or do in order to help us when we feel overwhelmed. And such examples could be energy drinks. So a lot of university students consume quite a high number of energy drinks like Score or Monster or Red Bull, which can either help them study through the night or they've become so addicted that it helps them sleep. Some people find the use of social media soothing, scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, and it actually impacts on their sleep. And some people find comfort in different forms, maybe gaming. Maybe you spend hours and hours gaming. So there's various forms of crutches and habits that we form that help us get through each day. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders is used by professionals in the field of psychology, for example, your psychologist, to define a number and a range of mental disorders. For the purpose of today's discussion, we're going to look at the DSM definition of substance use, and substance addictions within this category can include, amongst a few, alcohol, caffeine, cannabis, hallucinogens. And based on decades of research, the DSM-5 manual points out 11 criteria that can arise from substance misuse. And these fall into four basic categories. 1, impaired control. 2, physical dependence. 3, social problems. And number 4, risky use. So when you look through the list of criteria, using more or of the substance than intended for longer than you're meant to. 2, trying to cut down or stop using the substance but being unable to. 3, experiencing intense cravings or urgings to use the substance. 4, needing more of the substance to get the desired effect, also called tolerance. 5, developing withdrawal symptoms when you're not using the substance. 6, spending more time getting and using drugs and recovering from the substance. 7, neglecting responsibilities at home, work, or school because of substance use. 8, continue to use even when it causes relationship problems. 9, giving up important or desirable social and recreational activities due to the substance use. 10, using the substances in risky settings and putting yourself in danger. And finally, continuing to use despite the substance causing problems to your physical and mental health. The definition of addiction: being addicted to a substance or activity. It's a state of psychological or physical dependence on a substance and or activity or activities, used interchangeably with substance dependence. And also the rewarding effect of using acts as an incentive to repeatedly engage in using or engaging in the activity despite the harm and negative consequences. And also defined as inducing a sense of hopelessness, failure, shame, and guilt. For the purpose of today's discussion, as previously indicated, we're not only focusing on the addiction to alcohol or drugs, but we're looking at a range of addictions which could either be physical, like alcohol addiction or the use of illicit substances, also the use of prescription drugs or energy drinks, but we're also looking at behavioral addictions. So that's related to how you behave and how you spend your time. For example, could be spending too much time online using social media, stealing called kleptomania, sexual addiction called or addicted to pornography, shopping, gambling, gaming, self-harm, exercise, or food intake. These behaviors can be seen or defined as addictions if they have impact on your lifestyle, your ability to achieve academic success, your work performance, your personal relationships. For those of us who have experienced addiction personally or have a family member or have seen a friend struggle with addiction, you know that addiction can be quite messy. Um, At work, those who are alcoholics struggle with functioning, concentration, and impairment, and just basic task of getting to work each day becomes challenging. So there is the messy side and the chaotic side of addiction, but there's also the addiction that is quite neatly wrapped. The functional addicts who are struggling with addiction but externally presents an image of normalcy. They can maintain employment and they can secure success. They can maintain active social lives. They are the master of disguise. Even their closest friends won't know the truth. And how do you identify one? They often have excuses for why they can't attend gatherings or why they can't fulfill duties. They experience isolation. They have enabling relationships and also unexplained financial loss. If we look closer at the process of addiction and how one becomes addicted, one is able to better understand the person, not only describing them as an addict, but understanding the biological basis of addiction and how one has to separate the individual from the addictive patterns of behavior. So when one first encounters or uses a substance or engages with a behavior that has the potential for becoming an addiction, one will experience the reward system in the brain pathway. So there's a neurological basis linked to the reward system. And what happens is the brain releases dopamine, which is the pleasure center of the brain, and one experiences a heightened sense of pleasure. Linked to this experience is the learning and memory. So the interaction of dopamine and glutamate takes over the brain function of reward-related learning. So the brain begins to remember that when I engage with this behavior or when I use the substance, there's a pleasurable experience or feeling or outcome. And so the brain remembers this so that the next time you use, the brain will remember, when I use the substance, this is the rewarding feeling. And that is how the craving and tolerance, the compulsion for using or engaging in a behavior, and how it has the potential for becoming an addiction. The longer you use or the longer you engage in a behavior, the less dopamine is produced, so the less pleasure you will experience, and you will chase after the experience of this heightened pleasure that you first felt when you first used or engaged in the behavior. And it is virtually impossible to achieve that same sense of pleasure after the 10th time of using compared to the first time you've used. So one then experiences a complete loss of control, and addiction is also related to mental health conditions such as the feelings of depression and anxiety. To identify one single cause of addiction is nearly impossible. There are a complex network causes of addiction that is very difficult to pinpoint in any one individual. It is a combination of the biological genes, so you could inherit it from a parent or grandparent. Then there's also the psychological factors. We have to look at the personality, the impulsivity and sensation-seeking behaviors, but also could be linked to trauma and abuse in one's past. Mental health factors such as depression, anxiety, or post-traumatic stress disorder could also make one more vulnerable to addictive behavior or addiction to substances. There's also a number of environmental factors, so one needs to look closely at the family system, the accessibility to drugs, the academic success or the peer group, and also employment status. Then there's also the financial pressure that the person could be experiencing. So a lot of financial stress could make one vulnerable to the use of either substances or make one vulnerable to forming addictive behaviors. One could also be experiencing intense relationship issues or peer pressure or isolation, the lack of parental involvement or dysfunctional social relationships, and poverty could also make one vulnerable to the use of substances. Substance abuse also poses challenges in an academic context in terms of your discipline, as well as your aggression, resulting in poor academic performance and the possibility of dropping out of university. If we look at the context in which we all live and exist, South Africa is rife with social problems, including crime, violence, defiant behavior, bullying has increased, and this has led to a number of mental health disorders. SADAG, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, Dr. Busiswe Twala, who is the project manager there, they've indicated they have seen an increase in adolescent and young adults between the ages of 13 to 35 contacting them for support. And in 2020, a study was conducted that focused on the impact of social media on addiction, on employees' well-being and work productivity. And it was quite interesting to see how people who are meant to be spending 8 hours or 7 hours a day working and producing valuable work or outputs are actually spending most of their time online on social media, and that is impacting on their outcomes and work productivity. Another study was conducted in 2017 and analyzed the impact of social media for learning in Eastern Cape universities. And then there was lastly the report on the increased use of energy drinks amongst the health sciences university students in Gauteng. And the study warns us that consuming energy drinks can only become a public health issue for the country. And the reasons for consumption can include either to stay awake to study or prepare for an exam, to remain alert, and to concentrate. So energy drinks have become a coping mechanism for our post-school students, our tertiary students, and this is becoming like the latest pandemic. So here's a checklist, signs or symptoms of addictions. If you're either trying to checklist yourself or you've seen someone close to you displaying certain symptoms and you can't quite put your finger on it, here's a checklist that can help you. So it could be impact on academic performance and impact on sleep. The person could experience weight loss, skin color changes, or skin outbreaks. Could also experience intense urges or cravings as the addiction develops. Will definitely experience withdrawal symptoms leading to suboptimal performance and physical cravings. Will experience isolation, depression, anxiety, and paranoia. Develop unhealthy friendships with people who have similar habits. Experience financial difficulties due to large amounts of money being spent on drugs or alcohol, or the behavior, the addictive behavior. Neglecting responsibilities such as studies, work, or personal obligations, and also impacts on the person's ability to make proper judgments, including risky behaviors such as stealing, lying, engaging in unsafe sex, selling drugs, or crime that could land the person in jail. Some of the consequences of addiction could include impact on your academic performance, so your marks may drop. You might find yourself failing modules and having to re-register and pay for them. You may also experience interactions or engagements with the law, getting locked up or find yourself imprisoned. Could impact on your quality of life, on your personal relationships, and also impacts on your ability to focus, concentrate, and meet deadlines. Impacts on your employment opportunities. So if you have a criminal record, that will impact on your ability to secure employment. It may also impact on your ability to access or see your children. Biologically, it can affect your physical health. It can also affect your kidneys, liver, heart, and lungs. It also affects the brain functioning, the cognitive development of the brain. In some instances, you may need to enter into a detoxification program at an accredited organization where they have medical staff that can monitor your responses to the treatment and withdrawal. Medication is also an option. There's also an option for motivational interviewing or cognitive behavioral therapy, group or family therapy. But it is important to speak to someone you trust, even if it's your student counselor at your regional campus. You can book a session online. If you are afraid or worried about them identifying you, you can always turn your camera off, change your name when you make the booking, and just get yourself to speak to someone about what you are experiencing or what you are witnessing and how you can learn to help yourself or help a loved one overcome addiction and get the help that they need. The South African Depression and Anxiety Group has an online webpage and support number. You will see the image on the screen in front of you that you can WhatsApp. There's also the South African National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence. The other option is Narcotics Anonymous as well as Alcoholics Anonymous. Have a look depending on which region you're in. Speak to your counselor about where you can find additional support and speak to someone today.